The fog is lifting. Clarity is calling you forward. Welcome to Forward in Freedom. I'm Tanya Johnson. This is where awareness becomes power. Let's move forward in freedom.
One woman shares something that perfectly captures this stage of growth. She said, Tanya, I finally started making healthier decisions, but I still felt anxious anytime certain people didn't approve of them. She knew the changes were healthier. She knew the boundaries were necessary. But every time someone questioned her growth, she immediately started second guessing herself. Not because she lacked clarity, but because part of her confidence was still emotionally connected to other people's approval. And honestly, a lot of people are living there right now, making healthier decisions externally while still needing emotional confirmation internally. That's the conversation we're having today. Growth becomes emotionally complicated when your internal clarity starts developing faster than your external confidence. And many people don't recognize that tension until approval starts disappearing. You may ask, is validation important? Let's see. Validation is not inherently unhealthy. Everyone wants to feel understood, supported, affirmed, seen. That's human. The problem begins when your emotional stability becomes dependent on other people agreeing with your growth. Because then every disagreement feels personal. Every misunderstanding feels emotionally destabilizing. And every lack of support starts making you question decisions you already had clarity about. That creates emotional inconsistency, especially when growth begins changing long-standing dynamics. And many people don't realize how exhausting it becomes to constantly measure their confidence through other people's reactions. Some people are growing externally while still emotionally depending on approval internally. Why do some people become uncomfortable once you stop needing their approval? Because your growth changes the emotional balance of the relationship. When someone no longer controls your confidence, your decisions, your emotional direction, your sense of worth, the dynamic shifts. Not everyone adjusts comfortably to that shift, especially if they were used to being the primary voice influencing you, emotionally managing your decisions, controlling access to affirmation, being needed for your confidence. Growth changes that. And for some relationships, that change creates tension. Not because growth is wrong, but because emotional dependency is weakening. Some people felt more comfortable when your confidence still depended on their approval. And here's why seeking validation becomes emotionally exhausting. Constantly seeking external validation creates emotional instability because now your peace depends on reactions, agreement, praise, reassurance, acceptance. And when those things fluctuate, your confidence fluctuates too. That becomes emotionally exhausting, especially during seasons of growth, because growth often requires decisions that not everyone will immediately understand. And if you constantly need affirmation before moving forward, you will eventually begin shrinking your growth to maintain emotional comfort with others. That's dangerous because some of the healthiest decisions that you make in life will not always be immediately applauded by everyone around you. You cannot fully grow while emotionally requiring everyone to agree with your growth. The difference between wisdom and validation, this is important. Seeking wise counsel is healthy. Seeking emotional permission to become who you already know you need to become is different. Wisdom says, let me gather insight. Validation dependency says, I cannot feel stable unless people approve. There's a difference. And many people confuse support with permission. But eventually, growth requires emotional maturity, the ability to remain grounded even when people misunderstand you, people question your direction, people become uncomfortable with your changes. Affirmation becomes inconsistent because external affirmation was never meant to become the foundation of your identity. Support is healthy, emotional dependency on approval is not. While listening today, you may have realized that some of your emotional exhaustion has been connected to constantly seeking reassurance from people around you. Those are the kinds of emotional patterns that we work through every day at Clear Direction Coaching. Because many people don't realize how much insecurity, hesitation, and emotional confusion are connected to external validation patterns. And if you're ready to strengthen your confidence, clarity, communication, and emotional boundaries, you can book a 15-minute consultation at www.cleardirectioncoaching.com. And if relationship dynamics are part of your healing journey, the Gathering Alliance Relationship Assessment is an insightful resource to help you evaluate patterns with greater clarity. But there's another side of this conversation that many people don't recognize right away. Sometimes growth becomes difficult because external affirmation starts disappearing before internal confidence fully develops. You have to learn to trust your own growth. And many people spend years relying on external responses to measure internal worth. Praise meant safety, approval meant stability, agreement meant confidence. So when growth begins requiring independent decisions, it can initially feel emotionally uncomfortable because now you're learning how to trust your own discernment without constant reassurance. And that process takes emotional maturity, especially for people who learn very early that acceptance had to be earned. One of the clearest signs that approval has become emotionally unhealthy is when disagreement immediately you make a healthy decision and feel stable about it until someone questions it. Now suddenly you're overthinking, over-explaining, emotionally spiraling, questioning clarity you already had. That's not discernment. That's emotional dependency on external confirmation. And many people don't realize how much power they've handed other people over their internal stability. But growth often requires you to continue moving forward, even when applause becomes quieter, because God never intended human approval to become the foundation of your confidence. Your value does not increase when people praise you, and it does not decrease when people misunderstand your growth. If disagreement immediately destroys your confidence, approval may have become emotionally unhealthy. So, what does healthier confidence start to look like? As this pattern begins healing, some powerful starts changing internally. You stop over explaining every healthy decision. You stop emotionally collapsing when people disagree with you. You stop needing universal understanding in order to feel secure in your direction. And slowly, your confidence becomes less performance based and more internally grounded. That doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you emotionally stable. Because mature confidence is not built on controlling people's opinions, it's built on clarity, alignment, wisdom, and peace. And one of the healthiest parts of growth is realizing you no longer need anyone to understand your journey in order to continue walking in it. This is freedom in finally trusting what God has been developing in you, even when other people cannot see it yet. Healing looks different when your confidence is no longer borrowed from other people's approval. Notice what happens internally when affirmation becomes quieter. Do you immediately second guess yourself, over explain, seek reassurance, emotionally retreat? Question decisions you already felt clarity about? Or can you remain grounded even when approval becomes inconsistent? Because confidence grows stronger when it is rooted internally instead of emotionally outsourced to everyone around you. The healthiest version of you will not always be the most externally validated version of you. Take a moment to think about the voices that still influence your confidence the most. Whose approval still carries more emotional weight than it should? Where have you been looking for reassurance instead of trusting the growth already happening inside of you? And how differently would you move through life if disagreement no longer caused you to question your worth? A lot of people silently struggle with this part of growth, especially when confidence is improving externally. But insecurity still shows up internally whenever approval disappears. So I'm curious, what area of your life became harder once people stopped validating your decisions the way they used to? And what helped you to have your voice to be more confident? Your insight helps other people to recognize patterns that they may be struggling to explain themselves. And if these conversations have been helpful to you in your growth and clarity, make sure you subscribe, like, and share the podcast so that others will be able to receive the message too. And if today's episode brought language to something you've been struggling to explain internally, this may be the right time to dig deeper. You can book a 15-minute consultation through www.cleardirectioncoaching.com. You can also explore the Gathering Alliance Relationship Assessment and my book, A Woman's Exodus, Only by Grace. All resources and links are available in the episode notes. Over the next few episodes, we're going to continue unpacking deeper conversations around growth, identity, relationships, emotional healing, and personal freedom. And one of the conversations we'll be exploring soon is this: how do you recognize when peace has finally replaced survival mode? What changes emotionally once your nervous system no longer lives in constant tension? And why do some people struggle to adjust to calm after living in emotional chaos for so long? That conversation is going to resonate deeply with many people. I'm Tanya J, and this is the work of walking forward in freedom. Until we meet again, move forward in freedom.